Hello guys, Crypto Sunday, and it's a sort of bit of a naughty boy telling off week yet again. We've had Trump come out with tariff news on China. It's all mentioned yesterday, sent the stock markets down a bit, but sort of did quite a number on crypto. So I'm down 65,000, about 15%. Sort of usual corrections in the crypto market. We're sort of used to bigger than that sometimes. Keep sort of saying the 2017 30 to 35% corrections sort of seem to be largely gone, all bar Liberation Day and that sort of thing. But yeah, the sort of general mid-cycle corrections aren't quite as large as they used to be. But yeah, we'll see if they come again, or see if this gets worse potentially. I can't see the tariff news sort of getting particularly worse, and the sort of leverage that has now gone from the system is quite sizable, which we'll come to. As expected, a very, very sizable coin shares report. So this is the week before last, of course. But yeah, think that is a new record. 5.95 billion as employment shutdown sort of worries and things. Bitcoin hit a new high that week. This week obviously has had a bit of rough time, but yeah, we got some huge numbers. 3.5 billion obviously into Bitcoin, nearly 1.5 billion into Ethereum. A little bit out of the multi-asset yet again, even though it's green all across the board. People not wanting the multi-asset. But it's the sort of lower down ones that were surprising me. 706 million into Solana, considering there are no US Solana ETFs other than the Rex Osprey one, which does very, very little. This must all be presumably going into Canada and Germany, I think we saw, and Switzerland. So yeah, presumably that might be US money going into those ETFs because they don't have one themselves. But yeah, I thought that was incredible. I think that's 3 times the previous record for Solana. So pretty good. XRP I think has seen bigger weeks than this, but 219 million is pretty solid. And then sort of some smaller inflows elsewhere, 9.5 million into other coins. And yeah, as I say, by exchange or by country, you sort of got some small numbers: Australia, Brazil, Hong Kong, a little bit out of Sweden, but it's Germany and Switzerland, which, as I say, sort of 850, 870 million between those two. I can only assume most of that is going into Solana because the Solana amount can't be coming from the US, and then you sort of got about 5 billion into Bitcoin and Ethereum, and US is 5 billion. So yeah, Europe sort of going into Solana. Very interesting. So speaking of that small Rex Osprey ETF for Solana, we got another full inflow week. I think it's yet to see even a negative day. But yeah, 2.7, 14.6 million, quite good. 6.1, and then a flat day, and then 5.6 million. They're looking pretty strong. We know Rex Osprey have put in sort of a couple of dozen ETF filings, I think. So yeah, they'll be buoyed by all of this inflow, especially at 0.75% fee. That's some quite nice money for a small provider. People not quite so happy on the Ethereum side. Sort of got a positive start to the week, 180 million, and then a 420. Basically all led by BlackRock. BlackRock was 437, so it was more than the total. Outflows out from Fidelity, and then same again, 148 into BlackRock, but outflows elsewhere. Same on Thursday. Although outflows really across the board. 21 shares, VanEck, Invesco all seeing some outflows. And then on Friday, everyone sort of gave up, and it was outflows across the board, 179 million, possibly sort of late in the day when this news came out. The Bitcoin had a much better week, actually. The Monday, I believe, is an all-time record, $1.205 billion, with almost $1 billion just going into BlackRock, and sort of smaller inflows everywhere else. Interestingly, we haven't seen an inflow into the grayscale, the old grayscale, all week. We've seen quite significant outflows, so maybe that was some of these traders and whatever they're doing sort of taking that off, or sort of calming down at least. And yeah, rest of the week sort of saw very, very strong inflows into BlackRock and basically nothing else. Zit to zeros from Fidelity, and then outflows Thursday and Friday from Fidelity, and sort of largely outflows everywhere else. But yeah, BlackRock, 900 million Tuesday, 426, 255, and then even on Friday, 74 million inflow. So whatever BlackRock salespeople are doing, I would say they need a raise. Right? That's 65 billion in total inflows into the IBIT ETF, and I think it wouldn't have passed 100. It nearly passed 100 billion. I think it got to 99 billion, but now with the price drop, that will have come down. But yeah, without the price drop, it certainly would have crossed 100 billion. And I saw that it's now with this high fee and the high total amount in there. I believe it's BlackRock's most profitable ETF, which is, they've got to be impressed with that and focused on that, I would say. They're sort of, S&P 500 ETFs have more assets, but they're at, 7 basis points or sort of 3 basis points in America, and so you just don't make as much off it. 0.25% is lucrative, and the crypto industry call that cheap. Just looking at the treasury companies, it appears to have largely died. Michael Saylor sort of tweeted on the Sunday, no new orange dots, but a reminder that we still hold an awful lot. They sort of came out with their, we're doing quite well tweet, but we haven't bought anything. Smarter Web Company bought 25, so that's very, very small. Looks like no tweet from Metaplanet. They were sort of buying 5,000 Bitcoin a couple of weeks in a row, and there's nothing from them. And just a load of lovely AI photos from Michael Saylor and some videos and things that he's been retweeting. So yeah, all looks like it's gone very quiet on the treasury buying for a little bit. Maybe we need sort of some volatility, and well, I guess people weren't hoping for volatility to the downside. Could do with some upside volatility, but maybe even downside will provide some, institutional demand for convertible debt and that sort of thing. Maybe they get buying again, but I would have thought they want a decent increase in Bitcoin price. So we got all this on Friday. Various exchanges I've sort of seen reporting lower and lower prices. I sort of follow Bitstamp on TradingView because they, it's an old exchange. They go all the way back to sort of 2011, maybe even into 2010. So I just like that sort of long-term chart to look at. And I think they sort of said 109,000, 109 and a half. But yeah, some of them are sort of saying 104,782. I saw one say wicked down to 103,000, and sort of very, very quickly came straight back up. But yeah, the Friday was sort of fairly rough. But that's just for Bitcoin. Obviously, we know it gets much, much worse sort of elsewhere. And we saw some of the sort of centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges even worse. So, total liquidations, I think at first I checked it was mainly Bybit and sort of Binance, 4.65 billion in total liquidations. But then Hyperliquid sort of very, very quickly took over, and yeah, totals 19.35 billion in total liquidations. And I sort of always love to highlight, like, in a huge drop, you've had 2.5 billion of liquidations, people going short. So if you couldn't make money shorting the market on Friday, then you are doing it very, very wrong. I imagine this is just, as it's dropping, people sort of going 50x long, and it sort of has a little wick, a little spike upwards in amongst that drama, and you get liquidated. And you sort of think if it's dropping like 15% in a day, you should be able to make money going short. Like, just stop using such high leverage, 50x, 100x. If you go 100x and it goes 1% the other way, you're out. Like, it's just not worth it, is it? But yeah, 19 billion. A lot of people are saying this is similar to last time. I think probably the Liberation Day drop. People were saying the reported number is probably a lot less than actual realistic numbers, because the APIs only report, I think they said, once a second, and there were probably multiple liquidations per second. So a lot of people are saying this could be 30 to 50 billion dollars. That puts it massively above the Liberation Day liquidations, and 10 times the FTX and Luna liquidations in 2022. Obviously, price is up since then. Bitcoin's up 2.5x, 3x since since that sort of time, maybe more. It's up double since the previous all-time high. So the liquidations, I guess, naturally are going to be larger anyway, but that still is an awful lot. If you called it maybe in percentage from the top sort of liquidations, or percentage of the total market cap, maybe it isn't quite so harsh, but obviously on the dollar number, it looks bigger and makes all the headlines. And you can see the coins that people, were going into. So, like, of that 19 billion, only 5.3 is Bitcoin, 4.4 in Ethereum, 2 billion on Sol. I suppose Sol is a fairly big coin, to be fair. But it's the others that gets me. It's that's not sort of outside these three. You've got Hype Token, you've got XRP, you've got Doge, you've got Asta, the new Binance token, Sui, Litecoin, Link, Avalanche, all of these, Cardano, Binance token. You got all of these with their own separate little numbers, and then this 1.5 billion is everything not included in all of this. Even some of these small tokens, Ton, Polkadot, WorldCoin, and all that. So others is outside of all of this, and there's $1.5 billion liquidated. So why people are going massively long on what must be very, very small coins, sort of outside of the top 50, if you're going 20x long or something, 50x long, you're just asking for trouble, I think. So I think that Bitcoin and Ethereum and that sort of thing, fair enough, people will feel a little bit of safety and might sort of go long. And with if it goes to 103 from sort of 120, people are leveraged. I can understand them getting liquidated, but it's the others that I think people need to learn a lesson. They can drop sort of 25%, 50%, on an up day for Bitcoin. So, yeah, have a think. You can see some of these wicks, even on the big coins. Pump is sort of newish, I suppose, but still a fairly big coin, sort of 0.005 ish, drop to 0.0005, or maybe even a little bit below that. So you're talking 93, 94% off in a few minutes, near enough. So yeah, basically everyone who is long is going to get liquidated on that. A lot of reports that the exchange APIs and things were breaking. I heard some people sort of reporting that people were sort of going short here, it comes down to here, and people were still getting liquidated and losing their money, and they're sort of saying, well, I shorted and it's gone down, why haven't I made money? Even not sort of 50x long, people were like going 2x long supposedly, and this is all anecdotal from Twitter, you don't know how much truth there is in it, but yeah, people were saying that they did it perfectly and it should have executed again, and they still got liquidated. So possibly a little bit of accusations being thrown out at the exchanges, but we'll see if anything comes of it. So yeah, what you got there, Athena. Looks like Athena wasn't quite so bad. I mean, it is essentially supposed to be a stable coin, not entirely pegged to sort of a dollar, but it floats somewhat and gives you some income. But yeah, that dropped from sort of 50 cents to 15 cents, so that was fairly harsh. Cosmos, I think that's still a top sort of 50 token. That dropped from $4 to, you know, zero. It's pretty much looking like that. So that was basically wiped out and then straight back. And Sui, I suppose, probably the biggest coin of all of these. I think Sui is still probably top 15 now rather than top 10. But yeah, that dropped from, what is that, about $3.30 to sort of round about 50 cents, maybe 60 cents. So that's what is that? It's about a $15 billion token, I think, maybe sort of 10 billion before this. And for a $10 billion token to drop sort of 85%, that is pretty incredible. So yeah, basically, I would say hold spot and, if you've got liquidated on this, learn your lesson and move on, because this can still happen in the crypto market. So just looking at the Bitcoin hash rate, ready for the miners. I know I've been selling quite a lot of miners and sort of was a little bit, nervy, I suppose, a little bit about how much money they were going to be making going forward with this sort of rapidly rising hash rate. But sort of last week or so since the last update, we had a little bit of a reprieve. It sort of spent quite a long time under one zeta hash, which would have been crazy to say sort of a few months ago. But yeah, that is a little bit too low for the current difficulty. So it had been coming down. Although I see now Sunday we have had quite a spike up to 1.29 zeta hash. So that may sort of pull this. We were forecasting sort of a reasonable drop in difficulty. Sort of, I think this Thursday, down from 150. I think it was sort of proposing down to about 137. And I would say this has pushed it back up. Yeah, so 10.65 minutes now. Compared to what should be 10 minutes. They're now only forecasting a 6% drop to 141, and if this carries on, then it looks like Thursday we will get potentially a smaller drop. So, I've got no hesitation sort of still continuing to sell the miners, certainly on any strength. I mean, they didn't really drop all that much on Friday, so if they still continue to have some strength, then I'll be selling and continuing to get called mad. I sort of had somebody saying that selling iron at $50 was madness because they're going at $200 in the next sort of 5 years, and I just sort of think I really do not want to be betting on miners for the next 5 years. You've got this difficulty just ramping up forever and ever and ever, and sort of in the last 6 months going really hard. You've got all sorts of countries and people with basically free electricity thinking, well, we could use this to balance our grid or just make a little bit of money when there's no demand. All we've got to do is buy the rigs and plug it into our free power. And for public companies, that is not what they're trying to do. Or people like Iron. Now, obviously they'll say, well, the big thing with the miners now is AI, but I don't like, with Iron, for example, I think their AI projections are still about a third, maybe on the really bullish side, maybe half the revenue of their Bitcoin mining operations. So if you have that sort of AI ramping up and Bitcoin revenue falling, even potentially on a rising Bitcoin price, then I just don't see that as super bullish. The risk reward isn't there compared to you know, when I was buying iron at like $7, I sort of said to this chap, I think the easy money, well, easy-ish money has been made, and yeah, sort of risk reward of it going to 200 is very different. And obviously, if you're thinking 5 to 7 year time frame, I mean, certainly 7 years, you're going to have sort of two halvings in that time. You know, you've got halving coming in 2028, and then there'll be another halving in 2032. So you'd be down to what is it? It's 3.125. You're going to be down to 0.8 Bitcoin per block, which really is not a lot of Bitcoin. You know, we'd have to sort of obviously 4x from here just to keep current sort of revenue basically with two halvings. So yeah, Bitcoin could easily 4x from here by 2032, but that's not, you know, an increase. That's not good. We need to sort of 10x, 20x to be sort of growing and be expecting enormous prices, unless you think it's all going to come from AI, which I don't really. There's plenty of, you know, Iron have got 3 gigawatts of power, and there's plenty of people with, you know, massive amounts more than that, capital to build data centers and plug GPUs in, and I just, you know, they've got a good little bit of a moat at the moment and sort of a head start, but I don't think that lasts years and years and years. If the AI sort of build out is going to carry on, you'll get enormous competition coming in. So I think it's just getting a lot of people getting a little bit wide-eyed about the Bitcoin miners projecting enormous figures into the future when we were all doing this in 2021. So there you go. Just looking at the liquidity chart, obviously we got a fair spike up. You know, was thinking last Sunday that we were starting to potentially catch up with this liquidity graph up to sort of 205,000 nearly in the sort of mid-December time, and yeah, we got sort of absolutely whacked back down to where we were. A lot of people are saying this sort of leverage flush out is what precedes a strong move up. You know, you can't sort of carry on this run forever and ever with everybody at, you know, 100x long. That's sort of going up on hot air somewhat, and the sort of there's a lot of accusations of manipulation and the exchanges and people wanting to make money, and they just won't let people you know, keep that 100x long making an absolute fortune. It could cost them money, so it ends up sort of getting strategically and sort of coincidentally the exchanges make a fortune, drop down, and you have this leverage flush out, and then maybe it can rocket up all on spot buying, which no one can really do a lot about. Sort of continued ETF buying, you know, people wanting to buy the ETFs at sort of 125, presumably are very, very keen to buy it at 112, maybe on tomorrow's open. So yeah, we'll see. But again, obviously, it's a hell of a lot of catching up now to sort of get to, you know, the 180, 200 range in the next 2 months. And looking at the bloodbath of coins for the week, who has done the worst? Of course, this will be Bitcoin is 9.2% down, so that's you know, pretty much the best of them all. It looks like Solana dropped 22%, Ethereum 15.4%, Chainlink I think did have a huge wick down, even being a very large cap. Well, you know, a somewhat large cap coin. 22.3% ended up on the week. Metaplex 14.5, that's not too bad, less than Ethereum actually. Helium 16%, Radium 36%, and Jito 36% actually. So Solana sort of ecosystem coins getting quite walloped, and Honey 22.6%. So Yeah, under £400 my holding in honey now. That's really not happy at all. 82% down. You have to sort of near enough write off that money, which is a shame. Maybe they can come back, but they don't seem to be going up when the market goes up, and they do go down when the market goes down. So, yeah, make of that what you will. So, yeah, bit of a bloodbath week. Let me know how you guys are getting on. If if you're buying anything on the dip, or if you're one of the very unfortunate people going leverage long. I'm not sure my audience is generally those sort of people. And like and subscribe. See you soon.